Now let's talk about another elite California Democrat who is delusional enough to think he should also run for president. Let's take a look at this clip of Gavin Newsom.
I'm looking forward to who presents themselves in 2028 and who meets that moment. And that's the question for the American people.
Is it fair to say after the 2026 midterms, you're going to give it serious thought?
Yeah, I'd be lying otherwise. I'd just be lying. And I can't do that.
Is the sky blue? Is water wet? Of course Gavin Newsom wants to run for president. Everything he's doing shows us that he is very desperate and very thirsty to run for president. Okay, Gavin Newsom is so thirsty, he's like in the Sahara Desert looking for a Dasani water bottle. That is who Gavin Newsom is, okay? But Gavin Newsom, he doesn't care about the people of California. His eyes are on the White House, on Washington, D.C., and we see this with politicians all the time. These career politicians, they don't care about their own taxpayers, their own constituents. All they're thinking about is, how can I get to the next level? How can I get to Washington, D.C.? Because once they have that bug inside them, that little bee in their bonnet saying, run for president, they can't get it out. But Gavin Newsom, right? It's clear he doesn't care about Californians. He shut down the state. He told you guys in California to stay inside, don't be with your loved ones, don't get sunlight, sit around inside. What did he do? He went to French Laundry, a Michelin star restaurant, and had fancy wine and crumpets and scones and whatever they serve there. I don't know. It's not a restaurant I've ever been invited to. This is who Gavin Newsom is. Does Gavin Newsom clean up the streets of California for his own constituents? Absolutely not. But he cleans up the streets of California when foreign leaders come, like President Xi. So that's where Gavin Newsom's priorities are. Of course, Gavin Newsom is running for president. That is all he wants to do. But Gavin Newsom, he's also inventing this new persona, this new life story. He's doing revisionist history, sort of like Kamala Harris. When Kamala Harris is like, I'm a girl who struggled and worked at McDonald's, can't find a single picture, a single record, and we here at the Bureau have looked. Okay, nobody can find where this chick worked at McDonald's. But Gavin Newsom, he's invented this new life story that he had to hustle, and it was really a struggling man and hustling. Let's take a look at that clip.
But also, it was also about paying the bills, man. And it was just like hustling. And so I was out there kind of raising myself, turning on the TV, started, just getting obsessed, sitting there with the Wonder Bread and 5 stacks of,
it's like the White Stack 5 story.
Come on. Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Man, bro. Are you talking about me?
Young YG.
YG, man.
Every day in the backyard, just bouncing the basketball, throwing the ball against the wall until the ball is just like fraying, man.
Okay, the first thing that jumped out to me from that clip is that Gavin Newsom is sort of putting on a little bit of a new accent like Kamala Harris. He's like, yeah, man, I was a hustling man. He's like kind of this Jamaican guy. He's like, yeah, man, I was a hustling. I was a raising myself, man. Like, get this man. I'm here to tell you, Gavin Newsom was not raising himself. Okay, Gavin Newsom's father, we did some research, okay? His father was a California judge and a close financial advisor of the Getty family. Of course, the Getty Oil Company, one of America's richest families that had deep political ties. As far as I know, isn't Gavin Newsom's aunt Nancy Pelosi? He's somehow related to Nancy Pelosi as well. So for Gavin Newsom to act like he's some latchkey kid coming home, turning on the TV, heating up some ramen, raising himself, hustling, that's just such BS. But these Democrats can get away with their lies because Democratic media does not hold them accountable, right? If a Republican or an independent goes out there and says one little thing that might be off, oh, they're digging it up. They're interviewing their second and third cousin. They've got them on, Nightline. But Gavin Newsom can go out there and lie. We actually have a picture of Gavin Newsom. Gavin Newsom does not look like a kid who was struggling in high school. He looks like a swishy theater kid with his little scarf, and he's reading the newspaper. He's probably, captain of the football team or quarterback of the team. That's who Gavin Newsom is. This does not look like a guy who is struggling. Okay, it looks like his family also had a big budget for hair gel and scarves and fashion and clothes and doing little photo shoots. So for Gavin Newsom to do revisionist history and act like he's this kid who is coming home struggling and, counting coins like Oliver Twist, sorry, Gavin Newsom, I call BS. I call a flag on the play, and I've learned that's a sports term. So Gavin Newsom, you can keep running with these lies. We have one last clip, all right? Gavin Newsom talks about how being anti-woke is actually just anti-black.
They're rewriting history, censoring historical facts. It's a fucking believable moment. All this anti-woke stuff is just anti-black. Period, full stop.
Listen up, Gavin Newsom. Okay, you little shyster, you little huckster. Being anti-woke, okay, it's really not that much to do with race whatsoever. It has nothing to do with being anti-black. Okay, you're so full of hot air. It's just such a joke, Gavin Newsom. For us, anti-woke, we don't want men and women's sports. Okay, we don't want kids injected with hormones and trans before they're old enough to drive, before they're old enough to vote, to drink, okay, when their frontal lobes are connecting. We don't want kids in California taught about 5,000 different genders, okay, before they know their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. That's all we want. Okay, we don't want our streets shut down because delusional No Kings protesters have been told by MSNBC that we have some fascist dictator in the White House. That's what we want. Okay, Gavin Newsom, we want common sense. So for you to say that anti-woke is about being anti-black has nothing to do with being anti-black. Okay, the woke movement to me really kicked off a few years ago with all of the LGBTQ crap that was shoved down our throats. And I say that as a gay man, shoved down our throats. It was like all of these people, they fought for years and years and decades to get gay marriage. They got gay marriage, and what did they do? They had to find new things to play the victim card over. And so that's what they've done now with the trans movement and the trans agenda that's being pushed onto kids. Gavin Newsom, he will not defend women's sports in his own state. In fact, Gavin Newsom is fighting with the DOJ right now. Pam Bondi, California, is fighting to keep boys and girls sports. Why should little girls have to compete against men? Why should little girls have to share locker rooms with men? That is inappropriate. It's disgusting. And you as a father, Gavin Newsom, what kind of father, okay, who has a daughter and a wife, what kind of man thinks it's okay to have boys in girls' sports, to have men in women's locker rooms? So that's what being anti-woke is about. We're sick of the woke crap. And you even have folks like Bill Maher, who I don't agree with on everything, right? Bill Maher, he lives in California. He's an old school California Democrat liberal, okay? But Bill Maher, he's against all of this crap too. So Gavin Newsom, you're in the minority here, okay? You want to keep all this woke in schools and all this indoctrination. You are in the minority, but it shows. It shows how you don't have your finger on the pulse because you live in this Democratic elite bubble where facts really don't matter all that much. You don't have to sort of encounter everyday working class Americans. Gavin Newsom's not in Pennsylvania. He's not in Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Arizona. He's in California, okay, going to wine dinners and wine caves and fancy dinners and hanging out in his mansion with full security, and his wife goes shopping all the time, allegedly. So that's who Gavin Newsom is. Of course, he doesn't understand the plight of working class Americans and why they gravitated toward Trump, why they felt betrayed by the Obamas of the world and the Hillary Clintons of the world and the Bill Clintons of the world, and why they shifted to the right. If Gavin Newsom doesn't understand that, he's not a smart political operator, and I really don't think he is. I don't think Gavin Newsom's that smart. I think Gavin Newsom is really struggling. I think if you press Gavin Newsom, he starts to sweat. He does the hands. He does more hand movements than I do. So Gavin Newsom, he's another one that I hope runs in 2028. But like Kamala Harris, I will say this. The bar is so low for Democrats. The fact that Gavin Newsom and Kamala Harris and Pete Buttigieg are top contenders for 2028 tells us that they have a weak bench. The Republican Party has an incredible bench. I can think of 10 people right now I would be happy to see run for president. People I'd be comfortable with having the nomination, sitting in the White House behind the desk in the Oval Office come January 2029. There are people I'd be comfortable with right now. The Democrats, Kamala Harris, she blows $2 billion on a campaign. She hides out from reporters. She has no answers for anything. She sounds like a ridiculous drunk, okay? And she says she's not done. She might run for president again. And there are dumb-ass Democrat donors who will open up their wallets and checkbooks for Kamala Harris. Gavin Newsom, no Hallmark achievements. Gavin Newsom, no Hallmark achievement. Shuts down his state. Okay, shuts down his state and goes to French Laundry, Michelin star restaurants and has fancy meals. Okay, people are overtaking freeways and protesters are burning cars. Where was he again? At a Napa Valley fundraiser sipping on wine? Gavin Newsom doesn't know his priorities. Gavin Newsom doesn't know his ass from his elbow. So for Gavin Newsom to be such a horrific governor, to build bridges to nowhere, to run a deficit of tens of billions of dollars, for him to even say, I think I might run for president, shows you how delusional these Democrats are and how there's a double standard, okay? The bar is so much higher for Republicans running for office. Look at J.D. Vance, right? He's a Marine. He served this country honorably. He's smart as a whip. I would pay to see J.D. Vance debate Kamala Harris or Gavin Newsom or Pete Buttigieg. Okay, you can look at Marco Rubio. Look at Marco Rubio's accomplishments, right? Look at everything he's done as Secretary of State in less than a year. Look at the bench the Republicans have and look at those Democrats. So good luck, Kamala Harris. Good luck, Gavin Newsom. But the story is, okay, Democrats continue to fail upward with no repercussions. Republicans have to be able to run on merit. And the fact that Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom think they have a prayer shows you that they're high on their own supply and delusional. You guys need to hear about this. Today's show is brought to you by Oxford Natural, the people behind Optimum Day and Optimum Night. These are all natural supplements, and thousands of Americans are already using them because they actually work. Here's the deal. Optimum Day gives you clean energy, kills those cravings, and helps with weight loss. Optimum Night, that's your reset button. It calms you down, gets you sleeping deep, and you wake up ready to go again. And the results are insane. Michael Owen, the England soccer legend, he is down 40 pounds. Robbie from AFTV dropped over 100. Linda, a top law exec, she's down 50. Real people, real results. So if you want in, scan the QR code or go to the link below. And if you use the code SPOT, you get 70% off your first order. Yes, 70% off, so don't wait. Start your transformation right now with Oxford Natural.